Hi, my name is Heather Quick, owner of the Quick Law Group, Divorce and Family Law for Women. One topic that comes up quite a bit in the world of divorce is how will a divorce affect my immigration status? And that's a serious question because what we have there is two competing laws. We have the state law, which is our divorce, and as you've heard from other videos you've watched, every state is specific on what's required within a divorce. And then you have your immigration laws, which are federal, and federal law trumps state law, so it always prevails over that. But it's really important to understand where you're going to fall in this spectrum of going through a divorce and how will that affect your immigration status. So I'm going to look at two different things because that's really important. One is, are you the spouse who sponsored the person coming in? Did you meet your husband, he is from another country, and you were his sponsor into the country? And then secondly, I'll talk to it from the other perspective as if you were the one coming from another country and your husband sponsored you. And we'll look at, there's a lot of overlap, but it's really important, particularly for the sponsoring spouse, to understand some of those implications. So I'm going to start with that. If you sponsored your husband into the country, the first thing you need to do is find that paperwork, because you filled out paperwork when they came into this country and signed that you were going to sponsor them. You also, in that paperwork, agreed to financially support them. So you need to look at that. We need to see that. Bring that to your divorce attorney because a lot of this is going to look at the timing and the status and really what's going on now between you and your husband, what is the financial situation, and what can we best do to protect you. Because that is a valuable tool, and as you'll see, if you are the one who was sponsored, and your husband signed off on that paper, we're going to use that to get financial support. So you need to be aware that you have exposure there, particularly if your husband's not working. And again, it's separate from divorce law, but it's going to impact it because again, it's evidence, and you affirmed when you were bringing in your husband to this country or your fiance at that time that you were going to financially support that person. That's part of that paperwork within this, because the government, this would be my understanding of that rationale, is saying, okay, hey, you're sponsoring somebody to come into our country. You need to also take responsibility for them financially so they don't become a burden on the government to live. So that's kind of where that comes from, and that's, those are one of those papers you probably filled out, all in love, very happy to do that, but we definitely want to look at that as number one. Now, number two, and this applies really to both, is how long have you been married? If it's under 2 years, the immigration status is going to be in danger of being revoked and going back to the status of, not being allowed to be a resident. And that is because when there is a marriage and then they're looking to be a permanent resident or what they would call conditional resident, and to be getting that green card. Usually within this period, they don't yet have their green card, and that's why this is a conditional issuance, and that is based on the marriage. So, of course, part of their criteria is 2 years, then it's probably not a fraudulent marriage. That's the big thing. You got to really be cognizant of that and aware of that, because that is where they're going to be looking from an immigration status is, hey, this was just a fraud on the government, and now we're kicking this person out. So those are the things that I think should be of the most concern. I would be the most concerned about the financial. Obviously, if you're the one who sponsored your husband coming into this country, and if he's not currently working and you are, because in a marriage, let's say under 2 to 3 years, normally in Florida, you're not going to need to provide any spousal support. And if so, that would be very rare because the length of the marriage has a lot to do with it. However, I have effectively seen, and we have argued, that document where you pledge to financially support this person is going to be relevant, and it's going to expose you to that possibility. So it's just something, gather those documents, and the best thing you can do is, before saying anything to your spouse about considering divorce or that you are seeing an attorney, go see an attorney. And bring that information with you so that you can make an educated decision on how this is going to affect me and what do I want to do moving forward with the divorce, because we can always strategically plan when to file for divorce. Your immigration status is not at risk. Now, would you, there's all kind of movies and TV shows. Are you going to be under investigation for a fraudulent marriage? I doubt it. I think they got enough on their hands right now, but we need to look at that, and you definitely need counsel so that we can really understand what you're facing and really your financial implications of having an immigrant as a spouse and the fact that their status may be revoked. And if you have children, how's that going to affect it? That just goes into a whole nother thing. I will talk about that on another video or comment if you'd like to know more about that. How children come into play with all this, because that's really a whole other topic that needs to be addressed for sure. So next, I want to talk about the spouse who came from another country. So your husband signed, again, your supporting documents to allow you into the country based upon the marriage, whether you were married in another country or you came here and the two of you were married. So once again, just like with when the wife was the one sponsoring, we need that paperwork. That can be very helpful to you in terms of alimony, particularly if it's a short-term marriage. So we'd want to see that and look at that and see how that is going to affect the divorce case. Again, timing is going to be crucial. If you want to stay in this country and you've been married less than 2 years as a conditional residence because it was based upon the marriage, we really need to look at that, and it may be wise to postpone the filing for divorce. I'm not saying that it is or isn't, because there's a lot of factors to go into it, but you need, again, to seek counsel and meet with the attorney. Let's look at that. How is that going to affect your situation? Because we want to protect that if you want to stay in this country. And again, if you have children with your husband, this just creates a lot of issues, and we want to make sure that you're protected with the choices. That's the biggest thing. Do you want to stay here, or do you want to return home? If you want to return home, that's generally pretty easy, except for if you have children. And then it really becomes complicated. Are you going to be allowed to take the children with you? And then what if you can't bring them back? What's going to happen there? And there are some cases, there have been certainly a lot in the press over the few years, and it can be very, very complicated, extremely expensive to begin to litigate an international custody dispute. And there are a lot of different cases that have happened, and everyone, of course, is very fact specific. But we really need to look at that fact. Where are you in that residency process? Because there are several different levels. They seem to have as the benchmark the 2-year marriage, to where it goes from being a conditional residence to unconditional. You still may be at risk. We just have to look on the particular situation. If you've already been issued a green card and a permanent residency, it really shouldn't affect you. It may delay your attempts to get citizenship down the road, but depending on what your status is when we file for divorce, as well as when the divorce ends, that's going to impact whether or not you have the ability to stay in this country and for how long. And if you're interested, again, just like I said earlier, about understanding the implications for if you have children, especially if they are American citizens, a lot of times they're dual citizens, and you're concerned about your immigration status as well as your children, and how are you going to work all that out. If you comment, we will certainly do a video on that, because that becomes a much lengthier discussion, and there are certain tips that we would want to advise you to look at and things to consider prior to seeking counsel, so that you can make the most out of that initial meeting and really protect yourself and understand where you want to go and how that is all going to come into play. And really lastly, as with most of the tips that I give based on some questions we've received, you really need to seek counsel so that you can get good advice based on really what you want to do, what your overall goals are, and what you have to lose by leaving this country, or if you are a resident of this country, how does that stand with your property, your income, and your immigrant spouse? How is this all going to come down? It's really important, because of course this can affect the rest of your life, especially if you have children, but certainly it's going to impact you financially. So it's very important to seek that legal advice, understand your full options, and then you can make whatever choice is best for you, but at least then you know the options and it's an educated decision. If we can help you in any way, please reach out to us at the Quick Law Group. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and give us a call at the Quick Law Group.